We are back on Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio, News Talk, 1180, 1230 KGEO, 1410 KERI, now in Albuquerque, New Mexico at 1000 KKIM, and now in the Richmond, Oakland, San Francisco Bay Area on KNOOKmedium.com. We're talking about Obamacare today, and our guest in studio is Dr. Waguespack, talking about a great letter that he has that he gives to his clients when they come into his office. So I'm going to read a little bit more from that letter, the next paragraph or so. This new law politicizes medicine and, in my opinion, destroys the sanctity of the doctor-patient relationship that makes the American healthcare system the best in the world. Past tense, unfortunately. In addition to this, also badly exasperating
I'll explain it to you later.
The current doctor's shortage. The law will bring major cost increases, rising insurance premiums, higher taxes, a decline in new medical techniques, a fall-off in the development of miracle drugs, as well as rationing by government panels and bureaucrats, like passionate rationing advocate Donald Berwick, focusing delays of months or sometimes years for hospitalization or surgery. Finally, studies showed the legislation will adversely affect the elderly, the poor, and rural residents. Clay, you have a couple questions.
Well,
I know.
One of the things I shared with the doctor off the air was I was scheduled for surgery personally back in December, and I got the flu, and so I couldn't go have the surgery. Well, the doctor said, well, call me in January. I'm trying to make a decision whether I'm going to continue to practice or whether I'm going to terminate my practice because of Obamacare. And I called just this week, and they told me that she's no longer doing surgery. She still will see people in her office, but no more surgeries based on the Obamacare situation. Any comments on that, doctor?
I think you're going to see that people limit their practice. I don't know how many people are going to retire, although that is predicted. When we look at some of the upcoming regulations, they become cost ineffective or cost prohibitive. And if I'm towards the end of my career, I can't necessarily see that makes sense to continue. I see people who suffer from burnout and fatigue, and as a result, we've seen the onset of these limited concierge-type practices. However one feels about that, however limiting that might be, the reality is that if I can't go on the way things are being pushed onto me, I either retire or I change what I do. That does limit availability.
Well, I think we're seeing so many rules, regulations, and requirements. It's tying everybody's hands, from the individual who wants to buy insurance to the salesperson that tries to sell it to the doctor that tries to treat them, and then all the people that want to tell you what to do and us what to do with the rules and regulations, requirements. I'm also seeing that hospitals are now absorbing doctor practices, and when they do that, we're seeing a tremendous increase in cost because now they're billed through the hospital rather than through the doctor.
Right. The almost predictable, quote-unquote, unanticipated cost or unanticipated consequence. You can't absorb costs and stay in business. And so when these hospitals are doing this, what are they looking for? They're looking for market share. They're looking for control of the market. That's understandable, but that comes at a cost.
You know, something else you mentioned in this paragraph here, forcing delays of months or sometimes years for hospitalization or surgery.
So those are predictions based on other federally controlled healthcare systems, the so-called single-payer systems. Whether that will happen here or not, we can't know, except when it comes to availability. I need an appointment. I can't get an appointment for 3 months because so many people are trying to get in. Effectively, you've been delayed.
Sure. Well, to give you an example, excuse me, and we keep on talking about the Canadian system as one example they use, and I'm familiar with that. I'm originally from Toronto. But I know of a gentleman who, a very wealthy gentleman in Saskatchewan, and he comes out to Palm Springs every year, and he was due for a hip transplant, and he had to wait a year and a half. He was on the list. Came out to Palm Springs, fell, needed the replacement right away, went into a hospital in Palm Springs, negotiated a cash deal, which was at a discounted rate, and got the thing done right away.
Right.
So we're in Canada, he'd still be waiting a year and a half for that surgery.
And that'll be illegal in the future.
Exactly. That'll be illegal here. You won't be able to do that.
Well, we hope not. But you're right. As I understand, that is illegal in Canada, although it is done. But some would again argue, well, simply because he had money, he got what he wanted. I think it's more complex than that.
It is.
Yeah, well, the Prime Minister of Newfoundland needed some heart surgery, and he came down to Boston to have it done. Okay,
Right.
so,
That says a lot.
Yeah, it does say a lot.
I follow Covered California pretty closely, and I think they announced on the radio just the other day, and this is near the middle of January right now, that about 360,000 people signed up for Medi-Cal through Covered California. That's free insurance, 360,000 people. About 20,000 to 40,000 people signed up, not in Medi-Cal, but in a regular health care plan, but they all got subsidies, or 90% are getting some kind of subsidy. Who's going to pay for all this? And where are all these people going to go if you're an example of a doctor that's not accepting Medi-Cal?
That's a great question. I don't know that there is an answer. I think, again, we've allowed confusion to happen. We've called all of this health care. It's simply administration of health care. It's health insurance. It's health care coverage. It's not the care. Having a card doesn't equate to receiving care. How we practice depends on us being able to have an interaction that's fruitful, honest, and complete. And when there are pressures to see untold number of patients, that relationship fails.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Our in-studio guest is Dr. Waguespack talking about Obamacare.
Well, the next problem with Covered California that people aren't quite aware of is that the federal government's only going to fund those subsidies for 2 years. After that, it's a state of California requirement, and I just don't know where the money's going to come from when you look at both the federal and the state budgets.
Right. I don't know that there is I don't think anybody knows that there is a true conspiracy to have the system collapse. Although, when you look at these details, it makes you wonder, how could it do anything but collapse?
Well, it's been said by some of the leadership in Washington that this has been their goal for many, many years. We can go back to Senator Kennedy. That was his initial goal. And even our current president stated before he even got elected that a single-payer system was his goal, as did Harry Reid. So I think we're moving in that direction. I'm just not sure how long it's going to be before we get there. And then if we do get there, what happens to you as a practitioner?
I hope that our founding principles of freedom and freedom of choice will allow us to continue to practice in the way that we want, whereby you can come in and pay me a fee for a service that you want.
Yeah, it's getting a little scary here. I know Eugene, Oregon, 35% of their doctors retired as of the first of the year. 35%. I mean, they can't get enough doctors to go in the emergency room, because of the shortage they're having there. One of the things you mentioned here in your little letter is a decline in new medical technologies and techniques. How do you think that's going to occur?
Well, at the hospitals in town, I use a device to operate a Da Vinci robot. May be controversial to some, may not be. That device costs about $2 million. It doesn't matter whether I use it or not. The amount of money that I receive as payment, the amount of money that the hospital receives as payment, does not include that. It's the same whether we use it or not. How can that continue? How can new interventions, how can new devices continue to be developed when there's nothing to be gained from that? It's simply expense.
Now, when you were in the service, were there any restrictions on what you could do or how you could do it?
Not particularly. I mean, there was a command structure, but in terms of my medical interaction with the patient, no, it was limited.
Is it different today in your private practice?
In my practice, no, other than I have to go through more steps for approval of tests, treatments, etc.
Now, you're a sole practitioner, is that correct?
Correct.
Do you see any financial problems being a sole practitioner with all the requirements, all the forms you have to file?
Without a doubt.
So what's your future then?
I don't know. I have colleagues that have made alliances with hospitals, and some of them claim it's for ease of practice. Others are more honest and say it was the eroding net. It was the increasing expense that forced them into that. I'm hoping not to head that way.
Where do you see this going in the next couple of years?
I honestly see a two-tier system. I see a system in which we have a single payer of sorts. It may be that in name, not in name, but in practice. And I think there is going to be a system in which an additional premium is charged. And that's not what I think is best, but I think that's going to be the necessity.
So it'll end up being a rich man, poor man type of thing.
Well, that's what we're trying to get away from. We're trying to make everybody equal in this country.
Sure. But I agree. I don't think it's going to end up that way. I think it'll end up being the exact opposite eventually.
Right.
Yeah, when it's all settled.
That's how it is in every other realm in life. And I think that's an inescapable reality when pressures like this are put on the system.
Yeah.
Unless you happen to be in power.
Yes.
True. You have the proverbial Cadillac plan then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, especially if your union has it. But that's another story. Doctor, thank you so much for coming, and I really appreciate the time. And I have to tell you, I don't have too many doctors, but you're actually my favorite. I enjoy coming to see you when I do a couple times a year, and you've got a great practice here in Bakersfield. And again, thank you so much for the time.
Thank you.
We'll be back in a moment on Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio News Talk 1180.